making his triumphant return to Butler, Pennsylvania, the very spot where just 12 weeks ago, a would-be assassin's bullet grazed his ear and almost ended his life. A massive crowd gathering to cheer on the former president and remember the life of Corey Comparator, reserving a seat in honor of the firefighter who was shot and killed during the attempted assassination. Trump kicking off the rally right where he left off, pointing to the immigration chart that saved his life.
We love Pennsylvania, and as I was saying, oh, I love that chart. On this very ground, a cold-blooded assassin aimed to silence me and to silence the greatest movement, MAGA, in the history of our country. He did not stop our movement. He did not break out our spirit. He did not shake our unyielding resolve to save America. I will never quit. I will never bend. I will never break. I will never yield, not even in the face of death itself.
And Trump bringing along a very special guest, Elon Musk, making a passionate plea for supporters to get out there and vote. Watch.
I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark MAGA. This is no ordinary election. The other side wants to take away your freedom of speech. You must have free speech in order to have democracy. That's why it's the First Amendment. Get everyone you know and everyone you don't know, drag them to register to vote.
Greg, the line, as I was saying, is imagery and storytelling in 5 words, or 4 words, that is brilliant from a campaign standpoint.
It was the perfect opening. Though I would disagree with him on that guy being a cold-blooded assassin. I always believe in my head that he was a brainwashed assassin curated by media-generated hate. Because while he's in Butler, the media and the Dems are portraying his supporters as violent extremists who will riot, and if Trump loses, they will riot. And if they win, it's going to be worse. It'll be the end of democracy. But then you go and you switch over here, you see tens of thousands of people in a peaceful, professional, solemn event. Goes on without a hitch. It's just another contrast between what the media is telling you and what you see to be true. I mean, this was a historic event, and it's a symbolic refusal to lay down in the face of fear and the idea that, you shouldn't go back there. And it's kind of like what the media is saying about the election is in general. You better not go back there. You better not reelect Trump. You better not, because there's going to be hell to pay. If Trump wins, there will be chaos and destruction. And if that's true, it's going to come from them, because they're portraying this election more like an extortion, trying to plant the seed that if you win, there will be the return of BLM, Antifa, Hamas protesters on top of that, a complete violent meltdown. But they disguise this as a response to you, as if the population is worried about Trump supporters.
Jesse, I know that Laura Ingraham has an interview tonight, but as I recall, you saw him right after in Pennsylvania, and I know Johnny was there. What did you pick up from that visit?
Well, he looked humbled and more devout than I'd ever seen him, and so that clicked with me. Johnny was there over the weekend, and he'll have that tonight. The storyline of this election is Trump surviving to fight for you. And whether it's the mugshots, the show trials, the character assassination, or the real assassins, his reaction to these things, that fighting instinct where you pick yourself up off the mat and you keep going forward, that has gained a level of respect for the America First movement that was not possible before. And his return to Butler is symbolic of how Harris and Biden have run the country. They have failed to protect their opponent. They've failed to protect the border, our streets, our allies, the dollar. And him coming back and surviving and fighting hopefully foreshadows America coming back and continued to fight. Now, Elon Musk didn't endorse officially Donald Trump until right after Donald Trump popped up and said, fight, fight, fight. He tweeted it out. And for a lot of other people, at that moment, when he stood up and said that, it clicked for them, too. Because many Americans asked the question, why are they trying to silence this man? His entire candidacy is an indictment upon the system. The system's corrupt, it's secretive, it's incompetent. it's authoritarian, and Elon Musk is a forward thinker, and he can see that this election is not just about Donald Trump. It's about the future of the country. Can this country guarantee free speech, the right to bear arms, freedom of association, free enterprise? Can it guarantee our own sovereignty? And he's put a lot of his reputation on the line for this election because Trump loses, Kamala Harris is going to come after him and come after him hard. So for many reasons, this is an important election, and there's a lot at stake.
Judge, the crowd was massive, and they would have crawled over broken glass to be there. So what does that give you a sense of how things might go in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I broke this segment down into 4 parts. The first, the personal part. The fact that Donald Trump made it a point to bring Corey Comparatori back and the 2 other victims who were shot. And he recognized the individuals. He stopped the speech at 6:11. Which was the time he got shot. And, you know, the bells tolled. And then Chris Macchio comes out and sings Ave Maria. This audience, Dana, was so mobilized on their own. They started singing God Bless America. I mean, I had chills. I was almost in tears just watching the patriotism, how strong it was, how I was able to say, thank God not everyone is gone. And then, of course, there was the psychological aspect, the bravery aspect, where you had people who witnessed a shooting from the first Butler rally who came back. You had a president who was shot and came back. You had the family members who came back. Look, people suffer from PTSD just seeing a homicide, just seeing someone shot. These people experienced it firsthand. They came back. And then there's the political piece. Pennsylvania's a toss-up state. Every time it's 1 point, 1 point, 1 point. But to me, the telling thing was the Democrats had 916,000 more registered voters in 2016 in Pennsylvania. In 2020, it was down to 685. In 2024, it's down to 333,000 Democrats having an advantage. I really think that the way that it was orchestrated, the way that it happened, that it was just generic, it just happened, is going to make a big difference in the election.
Harold, I'll give you the final word.
So when I look at the race right now, and I could not have been more pleased for the president. He was able to go back there and give the rally, have the rally. Some of the substance I didn't like, but for the image of what it meant, it was a powerful thing, and every American has to acknowledge that. The singing, the songs, Judge, I agree with you. It was certainly inspiring. But at this point in the campaign, 29 days out, I don't care who's at the top of the ticket on either side, you're looking at the polling data, and you're looking at which voters you have to persuade to come to your side. As we get to the end of the race, and I said in the first block, I think both of them have decided that they're just going to try to appeal only to their base. In Pennsylvania, you look at 2 of them are basically tied. John Fetterman was on one of the shows earlier saying this thing is super, super tight. It's going to come right down to the very end. So if I were advising either campaign and any candidate, the one thing I'd be telling him or her is, what are you doing to try to win over those 30 to 40 to 50,000 voters in whatever state we might be in? I understand we want to keep the base fired up. We want to keep the base energized. But what are you doing to do that? I don't know. I listened to a lot of what the president talked about the other night, and I'm not convinced that he was speaking to that group, and perhaps he'll get to speaking to that group. 2, if I was blessed, if I'm blessed to ever run for office again, and Elon Musk decides to support me, and he speaks at my rally, one of the things I'm going to have him ask him to also say is, can you just kind of lay out to give the people something so they can be inspired by my economic agenda, that I'm going to be about growth and innovation? Just say something. I thought they might have missed a little bit of an opportunity to do a little of that. But again, that's just me. And as I've said many times before, I'm kind of old-fashioned about politics, I think, and you got to do those things. Finally, I disagree with you in this regard. Politicians, you see musicians and actors and business people come out and endorse people in politics all the time. And right away, whomever wins gets right back together with them. Elon Musk is the most important innovator and is the most important technologist of our era, maybe the last 2 eras. Whomever is elected president is going to have to work with him. I wish he was supporting my candidate, but I have no problem him supporting whomever he wants. And if Kamala Harris is blessed to win, I hope she reaches out to him, and I hope she does not punish him, if nothing else.
Harold, the diplomat. Excellent comments, of course. And if you want to see more about President Trump, Laura Ingraham has an exclusive interview with him. It airs at 7 p.m. tonight. Up next, Kamala Harris refuses to say if she supports Benjamin Netanyahu 1 year after the horrific October 7th terror attacks.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.